consumption in every one, save it, and then try to run his consolidated report again, which took a long, long time to run to get the actual result out. So just to give you a further overview of how a product costing model works, essentially, again, it has those recipe inputs. So you're looking at things like water, flour, sugar, other types of ingredients that go into actually physically making the product. Then the big part of the model was the labour cost inputs. This company was very, very advanced with activity-based costing, and they actually knew right down to within a few seconds how long it took, for example, for an employee to enrobe or disrobe to get onto the production line. They knew exactly how long it took to move from one activity station to the next, how long every activity took. All that data was then fed up by position classification up into the actual model there. There was a lot of information that was captured. The biggest complexity though for our management accountant was that there were a lot of inputs, like physical products that were inputs into the final product that were made in the factory as well, that consumed things like milk, sugar, flour, etc. that were made, but then they were inputs into the final recipe. So there were issues around double counting products, double counting inputs into the final product. So we had hundreds of products and hundreds of different types of labour inputs that he had to manage in the whole process. So what we ended up with here was an Excel-based Palo solution. We went from 300 spreadsheets down to one. One spreadsheet, he just changes the product at the top, everything's recalculated for him in one place. We leveraged off the powerful Palo rules engine. So rules in Palo very quickly, very similar to Excel formulas. So in Excel, you have a cell that's calculated the formula off different cells in the spreadsheet. Does the same thing, but in a multi-dimensional way. So inside the database itself, those calculations are occurring. We had lots and lots of rules to assist us to do those calculations for the recipes, etc. As I said, there was one standard template for all the products. Most importantly, he could change all his drivers centrally now. So one place on the one spreadsheet, he could change the price of flour for this particular month, and everything is flowed through every single recipe and every single product build throughout the whole model. So it's very easy now for him to do what-if scenarios. What if the price of sugar changed? What if the commodity prices change in 3 months' time for this particular input? I'm going to see all labour costs change. There is the unions drive up the cost of labour for a particular employee classification. I can model that on my output costs for my products. For the very first time, you get product and consolidated product reporting. So you could see how much a product category or group was costing, not just an individual product line, even product brands. So what is this brand costing to manufacture? Is it viable for us to keep doing this from a production perspective? So those sort of questions he was being thrown by the executive team, and he could finally answer that with his model. And obviously the most important thing out of all this, the key investment decisions to buy the new ovens and spend all that money was now really supported by real data. There were real numbers behind that, and it provided a great basis for that investment decision. That was a key input into it. So we've covered a couple of completely different industries. I've got 4 to share with you, and this is the third one. Flipping now to retail hardware merchandise. So a company that was Mitre 10 in Australia, they sell essentially hammers and nails, right? They're a hardware company. Very big, they have 250 branded and 250 non-branded stores in Australia and New Zealand. And at the coalface here, we had our commercial manager. The commercial manager was responsible for preparing merchandise plans and quarterly budgets for the organisation. Okay, so we had a team of merch planners, and he had 2 or 3 analysts as well that were analysing that data and preparing budgets. And the problem he had was he really felt he had to plan weekly to really manage the data correctly. But unfortunately, the company ran its whole business by calendar months. And I don't know if you have any here who ever tried to plan weekly and roll up in the calendar months. It's an absolute disaster because weeks don't fit neatly into months. So we had major problems around that. He also had a key resource that left the organisation and had all the knowledge of how things went, decided to go off to another company. And probably his biggest problem was that he could not answer questions put to him by the executive team in a timely manner. It would take days and days and days to recut data or get another view of that data for him to answer a specific question. And it was causing a lot of frustration in the organisation because there was no timely responses to the questions they put to him about the data. So the solution we came in and assisted him with, again, was a Palo model, mainly in Excel, although now the company has extended it over to the web as well. But initially, when we did the initial phase there, they were planning by month. We now broke the planning down into week. They could update all their plans by week, which was fantastic because they could start modelling things like holidays, holiday season, certain events happening in the country. They could see trends by week, what was going on by store. They used to be able to report monthly, but after we finished the plan, they could have automatic daily reporting. They had weekly inputs and reporting, and they could also report by calendar month for actuals versus plan. They used to plan for 26 departments only. That was as detailed as they could get. Now they can plan for 250 categories below department level because it's so much easier. And why this was really important is because the company at the time was restructuring a lot and creating new departments, and other departments would drop off. Now they can just roll up their categories very easily and regroup them using Palo into different departments. So a lot of flexibility there. They originally had 4 planners. That's now down to 3 planners. They can do as much work as the 4 used to. And the 4th planner now is on the analysis side of the business. They used to have one single point of undocumented risk in the organisation, which is the guy that left. And now they have shared responsibility between IT and the business. So IT looks after the hardware, the infrastructure, the network, etc., and the business takes care of the business models themselves. So here's a couple of quick screenshots from their model. This is probably one of their key templates they use that lots and lots of people in the organisation use, where they have a rolling 53-week plan now of everything going on constantly. So they're not locked down by quarters or financial years, it's a rolling forecast they do. And the blue line there represents their actuals coming through the organisation by week. The green represents their forecast, and the yellow line represents last year by week. And we're currently looking here at a summary by, I think that's their sales figures. They could also toggle it very quickly to see their inventory levels, their purchases, their stock balances, etc. And they can very quickly see, they know why it dipped down here. Well, that was a public holiday that week and some of the stores were closed. And this was Christmas time up here, which caused the peaks, and that's what they're planning for. So they had real insight into the data and could really explain to management what was going on in each one of those bars. So it provided that real insight into the data to really, again, to drive that real decision making of where to invest their sales dollars, their marketing dollars, and what product groups, for example. The final one I'd like to share with you today is a customer we've had. This is quite a recent customer, which we just completed a big project for, called Forever New. They're a retail fashion company in Australia. So they've got about 300 stores, it's about 300 stores, yeah, in over 6 countries, but based mainly in Australia and New Zealand. And at the coalface here was a senior merge planner. And his job was preparing weekly store reports issued to the board every Monday morning at 9 a.m. So every Monday morning there was a board meeting, and he had to provide all the data ready to go then. This poor guy was confronted with a number of pretty large problems. The first thing was, which was interesting, they already had a BI system, but it was very old, it was very inaccurate. And there was because it was inaccurate, there was a big lack of trust in the organisation with the numbers. People had decided, look, I can't trust those numbers, I don't want to get in trouble again, I'm going to start doing things in Excel and Microsoft Access, and etc. So by the time we came along, the old system was still running, but not too many people were even using it. There was major data integrity as well between their ERP and their BI system. So to give you a bit of a rundown of their reporting process, it was a 7-day-a-week operation, so all the stores were operating 7 days a week. The week finished on a Sunday night at around 9 p.m, the last store closed in Australia. The board met 9 a.m. the following morning. Okay? Our poor merch planner was very stressed in 1 hour to reconcile and validate all those numbers before he could give them to the board. And this is no joke, this was really happening, and it was so bad there were weeks where the board had no numbers to even look at because he was just not confident in the numbers, and there were times the numbers were wrong as well. It was just too much pressure on this guy to get all that going within a 60-minute block of time. So what we came in here again was with Palo, mainly deployed through Excel, and we basically rebuilt the whole model, the BI model that was existing. We rebuilt it from the ground up in Palo. They finally had real opening, closing stock positions by week across all stores across all countries. There was currency conversion in here for all the countries as well, so they could see in local currency or Australian dollars. They finally had more accurate revenue and expense data for the first time, so really pinpoint which stores were making the revenue, what was costing the most amount of money. And most importantly for our merch planner was that Palo reconciled exactly to the source system. So in this phase they weren't using Palo for planning. So there was no reason there should ever be data in Palo that did not exist in the ERP. So we used the whole ERP system to drive variables, to drive all the assumptions. We'd use the ERP for that and drive all that value forward. So I'm thinking here, for example, foreign exchange rates, all that sort of stuff was managed in the ERP, and then Palo would just report on it. So it was absolute transparency, absolute reconciliation between those two systems and could be relied upon. So there was a lot of confidence in the numbers finally, and it meant when people got confidence in it, there was a greater buy-in by staff members of that organisation to use the tool. So finally, the BI system was being deployed to a lot wider audience for a lot of other actions as well. So a quick rundown on what we've covered here today. We've talked about medical health industry, a company using Palo there, industrial manufacturing with a costing model, completely other side of the coin. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.